So I have found a site here called www.savoirhistoire.wordpress.com. It's in French, but I have here the English translation. The translation may not be perfect, but we will battle through. This is called Itinerary of a Diamond Digger, as opposed to a gold digger. It was on July the 2nd, 1869, under the name of Anne-Marie Olympe Chazan, that the famous Léon de Pougy was born, who would become one of the most famous courtesans of her time and notorious diamond digger. I love that term, diamond digger. But for the moment, it is still only a plump pink baby who only fails to admire her dear mother, Marie Gabrielle Lopez, a 42-year-old bigot who dreams of a very well-behaved little girl and hastens to place her under the protection of the Virgin Mary. At least she tried. Her father is the captain of the spearmen, Pierre Chazange, a tough soldier with a bristly beard reeking of tobacco. It takes a lot more than a baby in swaddling clothes to move him. The family, whose incomes were very modest, then lived in Morbihan, in Lorient more precisely, in a small cramped apartment that Anne-Marie left with regret at the age of 9 to join the nuns in the convent. Definitely everything is done to make this little girl a saint, but the ways of the Lord, all that. Well, I can imagine putting a little girl in a convent would destroy someone emotionally at that age when you need your parents. You need that emotional contact with your parents. So putting them in a cold, damp nunnery, I could imagine would be the worst thing you could ever do. At the convent of Sainte Anne d'Auray, among the faithful companions of Jesus, Anne-Marie grew up and received an excellent education during endless lessons in good behavior given by the nuns. Deportment, politeness, the art of conversation, everything a woman needs to know. 4 years later, when she leaves the thick stone walls of the convent, she has become an accomplished young girl. She is good to marry, as they say in the old days. And she will not long escape the chains of marriage. In a few months her parents found her a husband by the name of Armand Pourpet, a young naval officer aged 24, whom she married nilly-willy on July the 15th, 1886. She had just celebrated her 10th birthday. My goodness, that's not that long ago either, is it really? That's crazy. 7 years, and here she is already entangled with a husband she doesn't know and who is determined to make her his wife, bluntly. Again, this is translated, so we just have to try and read between the lines. 50 years later, in her memoirs, often with a French translation, the her will be translated as his, but they mean her. She keeps a bitter memory of this union and of the wedding night for which she was not prepared. Anniversary of the day when I got married, and when, with a direct blow which suffocated me, I lost my virginity. At the time, nothing shocking. Marital rape was a legal act, the woman a belonging, like a piece of furniture, to her husband. During a quick honeymoon, the provincial discovered Paris, the city of light, its restaurants, its theatres, and above all, Sarah Bernhardt, whom she applauded on stage in La Tosca. She was captivated by the presence of this artist, to whom bouquets of flowers were thrown to cheers, and who was always surrounded by a crowd of admirers. In petto, she begins to dream of glory, of success, of being adulated one day too. And here we have a trading card of Sarah Bernhardt, the very famous Sarah Bernhardt. But Anne-Marie's fleeting daydreams quickly go up in smoke with motherhood. Because Madame Pourpet got pregnant a month after her wedding, she wasn't prepared for that either. She consoles herself for fatigue and pain, imagining her future granddaughter, because she has decided it will be a girl, sweet and kind. Out of the question to have a boy, violent and jealous like her husband. Bad luck. On May the 18th, 1887, after a complicated childbirth experienced as a real martyrdom, Anne-Marie gave birth to a son. She names him Mark, without much conviction, as you can imagine. Her new life as a mother is now to take care of this kid for whom she feels no maternal instinct, and to keep the house until the return of an often absent husband. Then the family moved to Marseille. Change of scenery, nothing to do with the coasts of Brittany. The boats that dock there return from the Orient with their holds laden with exotic objects that have been all the rage in France for several decades with the vogue for Orientalism. Failing to jump on the first ship that comes to set sail, Anne-Marie, who increasingly wants to go elsewhere, ends up taking a lover. And as in any good boulevard theatre play, Monsieur comes home one fine day and surprises his legitimate, floundering in illicit love affairs. By God, my husband! Armand Poupet sees red, perhaps even purple. The cuckold has the trigger that tickles him. He draws his revolver and almost kills his wife by shooting her in the behind. Enough is enough. Immediately recovered, Anne-Marie takes her clicks and her slaps. The expression is also from the 19th century salute the effort, and packs up for Paris, where she obtains a divorce. From now on, little Mark will be raised by his paternal grandparents. We are in August 1889. The beauty is 20 years old and only 400 francs in her pocket. But she is determined. This old dream, secretly cherished, of glory and luxury that the stay-at-home mother had to smother under a bushel, becomes her ultimate goal. Her new motto, enjoy or perish. I love that motto. Enjoy or perish. And to achieve this, there are not 36 solutions when you are a penniless young woman. You have to make a career in gallantry. However, the competition is fierce. In Paris there are more than 80,000 prostitutes, mainly stony women and lookouts on the boulevards, who lift their torn petticoats for a glass of bad absinthe at 2 cents and live in misery. Only a handful of these independent courtesans strut their stuff sumptuously in outrageous luxury, residing in mansions at the expense of a few potentates who cover them with jewels. Like most of the great horizontales, she changed her name and chose that of Liane, Liane de Puget. A good name, isn't it? That of a beautiful plant, slender and tenacious, ready to grab its prey with its sharp little pink claws, to entangle them in an intoxicating grip, and to make them spit, of course. Because she will do everything to achieve her goals. In this case, to wallow in luxury and wear 7 rows of pearls. And our Liane is off to a pretty good start, given her many strengths. This snapshot, taken by the famous photographer Charles Reutlinger, will save me the trouble of giving you a detailed inventory of her charms. It is with the frantic freshness of her 20s, her pure and gentle profile of a cameo, her complexion of white camellia, and her little contemplative air, that she takes her first steps in the demi-monde, this world where we undress. The other gigolettes and cabotines just have to watch out. And there we see her looking very beautiful there, obviously in her early 20s. I love those Edwardian hats. Fantastic. But becoming a real cocotte cannot be improvised, and Liane must learn the basics of the trade. She therefore begins by studying in the dumps, the bourbourg and the Parisian brothels, where she learns to reproduce with exquisite art umbilical dances and other concupiscible pantomimes. My goodness, imagine trying to say that quickly 10 times. She is soon initiated into the mysteries of high gallantry by Valtessa de la Bigne, a famous Parisian demi-mondaine, who will become her lover. At the same time, she takes dance lessons with Madame Marquita, a fabulous cabaret dancer. In no time, she acquired the elegance and refined tastes that were the prerogative of wealthy Parisians of the time. The charmer, who now excels in the art of moving hearts by shooting long incendiary glances that are worth poems, becomes famous among the big casseroles. Soon we will only talk about her in all of Paris, and her beauty becomes legendary. She honors social salons, the opera or racetracks with her presence, and hangs out, swinging her slender buttocks in the Bois de Boulogne, where men and women crowd in the hope of catching a glimpse of her. From the beginning of the 1890s, her name appeared regularly in the press, where, for the greatest pleasure of readers, the names of her many lovers were unpacked, but also the details of her toilets, jewels, and crews. And there she is swinging her slender buttocks for all to see. Liane de Pougy, a businesswoman. Now that she can blend in with the women of the best world, there's no longer any question for her of inviting simple commoners or horrible penniless gnomes into her sheets. And she sends more than one crazy, I tell you. As a practical woman, she sees the advantages that certain relationships can bring her, and wisely chooses those to whom she will lavish her voluptuous and very expensive favours. It should be noted that she charges 12,000 francs for a quarter of an hour in her company. You hear? 12,000 francs? So that's the equivalent of 45,000 euros? Can that be true? My God! That is very expensive, slender buttocks. My goodness. The list of the lucky ones, which will soon become too long to enumerate, already includes the eminent Egyptologist Lord Carnarvon, the critic Ferdinand Brunetière, the Maharaja of Kapurthala, or the Marquis de MacMahon, nephew of the famous Marshal, whom she laughs at afterwards in a fluent voice. I gobbled up MacMahon's fortune like one gobbles up an egg. In short, Liane leaves her clients with her hands laden with gold. Proudly showing off her furs and jewellery, here is our young beauty diamond like a storefront of the Place Vendôme. Yes, she's taking full advantage of her beauty to get as much plunder as possible. In 1894, she teamed up with Henry Mailhac. These names. You know, the successful playwright, academician, librist of the composer of operetta Offenbach, but above all king of Parisian nights. He's an unsavoury septuagenarian, but parading around on his arm is a good way to meet beautiful people, and hop, after a few seductive catteries, he gets her hired at the Folies Bergère. On April the 13th, 1894, she began her theatrical career there, presenting magic tricks and acrobatics. Her name, in golden letters, sparkles on the luminous announcements of the boulevards. And there we have the advertisement for the Folies Bergère. Liane de Pougy. On the boards of the Folies Bergère, in front of an audience of prestigious spectators, two other boarders are already competing, and not the least, since they are two of the greatest beauties of the time, Emilienne Delancon. Oh my goodness, these French names are killing me. Emilienne Delancon and Caroline Otero. If our Liane is soon the first in the pocket, or should I say under the petticoat, since these two quickly start an affair, she maintains a fierce rivalry with La Belle Otero. On the side of the press, the critics agree that, despite her adorable conviction, her touching languor, and all the goodwill in the world, the charming child has hardly any artistic talent, and she plays better lying down than upright. Well, we can't have all the gifts. Even Sarah Bernhardt, whom she consults in search of advice, kindly recommends to her, "Don't open your mouth, just show yourself. You are beautiful enough for that." Indeed, it is enough for Liane de Pougy, described as the prettiest woman of the century by Edmond de Goncourt, to go on stage in her infinitely suggestive outfits with hypertensive bodices, and to offer the heady spectacle of her carnal beauty alone, to throw the whole assembly into an erethism against which no one can fight. It is well known since the world began. And here we have a stylized Liane de Pougy showing off her best assets at the Casino de Paris. Feminissima by Liane de Pougy. In Paris, where she stays in the most beautiful residences, she owns several mansions in the most haunted districts of the capital. Liane has become a real star, a celebrity in society life. Her worshippers are numerous, often famous and wealthy like Maurice de Rothschild, who showers her with presents. Similarly, Catulle Mendes and Montesquieu oh no, save me from this. And Montesquieu wrote her sonnets while she inspired her great friend Jean Lorrain to write a ballet in which she danced. She is now called the Divine, just that. She who specialized in large fortunes and blue blood drags her trophies of chained hearts in her wake. Industrialists, politicians, exotic princes, gentlemen of high and old aristocracy bearing historical names or covered with stripes and golden aiguillettes. This earned her another nickname, that of Passage des Princes. A very busy passage, beware of traffic jams. Thus Liane walks her pretty face and her velvety eyes to the four corners of Europe, always in good company, in search of new conquests. But under the makeup and the gleaming jewels, and under her air of triumphant serenity, Liane de Pougy has a great melancholy, who goes through several periods of this depression, which is then called the spleen. On June 5, 1896, she even attempted to commit suicide by laudanum poisoning, because her lover, Dr. Albert Robin, who treated Zola, Daudet, Lorraine, and Catulle Mendes in particular, had been unfaithful to her. And this doctor is not the last for whom Liane will empty a bottle of laudanum, always skillfully dosed to avoid the worst. However, for her part, Liane does not hesitate to coo from right to left, both with men and with women. She also made headlines by openly announcing her bisexuality and her sapphic liaisons, in particular with Natalie Clifford Barney, a young American of 23, whom she met in 1899 and would later become a great woman of letters. Liane de Pougy is still talked about through the publication of half a dozen autobiographical novels, whose content, often sulphurous, ensures her a certain success in bookstores. In one of them, Sapphic Ideal, she also stages her passionate relationship with the beautiful American. We can also cite among her publications, I'm not even going to pronounce that, my dears, relayed in the form of serials in the press. A woman who writes novels? What a nice scandal. But Liane plays on it and uses her image and her notoriety to sell and build her own legend. And the daring courtesan to proclaim, everyone sells something. Me, I sell my ass. Why not? You're very open about it. And she was very successful at it too. Liane is 33 years old, including 13 years of career in gallantry, and almost no one can resist her. She even dated, only once, with Ronaldo Hahn, Marcel Proust's lover, and frequented on this occasion the future author of In Search of Lost Time, for whom she would inspire the character Odette de Crécy. What a great name, Odette. Odette de Crécy. She continued to perform on the stages of music halls while she was in charge of a new women's illustrated magazine, L'Art d'être jolie, which appeared for the first time in July 1904. But this life of debauchery begins to exhaust and sicken her. And then, above all, she is terrified at the idea of turning 40 in a few years. How to face the inevitable decline of her beauty and her success with men. For the femme fatale, this vision is nightmarish. In 1908 she met the young Romanian prince George Gica. He was 24 years old and madly in love with her. She married him 2 years later, becoming by this union princess and niece of Queen Natalie of Serbia. And there we have the young prince, looking very solemn and poetic there, well posed. The two lovebirds spend long months in Algeria, far from Paris, from a scandalous past and former lovers who run the streets and theatres. In George's arms she finally draws a line under her life of gallantry and officially retires from a life of debauchery. When the couple returned to France, it was to settle down out of sight in the Pavillon de Noël in Saint-Germain-en-Laye, within the castle that the Duc de Noël had built under Louis XIV. The months pass, punctuated by champagne evenings in the company of good friends. When suddenly, July 1914, war breaks out, Liane is horrified. Her son Marc joined up to go to war and defend his country, much to the chagrin of his mother, who, over the last decade, had reconnected with this talented son, aviation pioneer, whose many exploits were reported in the press. She then transformed her pavilion in Saint-Germain-en-Laye into an infirmary and received the first wounded. But on December 2nd, 1914, she learned that Marc, her beloved eagle, had fallen on the field of honor in the Somme. Devastated, it takes more than a year to recover from this mourning, and weakened, she enters a nursing home. And there we see her son there, the aviation pioneer, Marc Pourp, unfortunately didn't come back from World War I. In 1926, it was her husband's turn to abandon her, 2 days after her 57th birthday, to marry a young artist whom she had welcomed under her wing, meaning under her bodice. Big slap in the face. She then finds in Paris her former lover Nathalie Barney, as well as her friend Mimi Franchetti, and shares with them both a life made of tenderness and cajoling. But 2 years later, when her husband Georges came back to her, Liane gradually moved away from those she loved, and began to turn ardently towards religion and philosophy, in search of a meaning to give to her existence. Redemption. In the summer of 1928, she discovered on a walk near Grenoble in Saint-Martin-de-Veneux the Sainte Agnes Asylum, run by Mother Marie Xavier, which sheltered and watched over the mentally handicapped. Liane, touched in the depths of her being by the misery and distress of these women, becomes their protector. We see in the other story it said it was handicapped children, now it's saying handicapped women. She moves heaven and earth to solicit funds, calling on all her wealthy old acquaintances. A few years later, in 1931, the one who piously reads a chapter of The Imitation of Jesus Christ every evening confides about the Sainte Agnes Asylum. This work has become my reason for living. These unfortunate, admirable sisters are now my whole family. After having reached the firmament of gallantry, the former courtesan now feels the need for a conventual life. However, she still shares her life with her husband Georges, a notorious onanist and exhibitionist whose manias have not improved with age, but imposes more and more distances on him. Oh dear. And there they are, obviously on a boat or a ship or a ferry. Age has caught up with them. In August 1943, 2 years before Georges' death, Liane was admitted under the name of Anne-Marie Madeleine de la Pénitence into the Third Order of Saint Dominique, a lay fraternity located near Lausanne. It was there that she ended her days in the odour of sanctity on December the 26th, 1950, at the age of 81, in her room at the Carlton Hotel, which she had transformed into a monastic cell, where she wasn't exactly doing it hard, was she? I mean, she wasn't in the damp walls of the convent. She was in the Carlton Hotel, no less. Ah, I love it. So you can still pretend to be pious, but still have a bit of luxury and have room service delivered. Classic. She will be buried, according to her wishes, in the small cemetery which adjoins the Sainte Agnes Asylum. Decidedly between the Virgin and the whore, Leanne will have, throughout her life, embodied an eternal male fantasy. Well, my dears, I hope you enjoyed that story of a life again. And there we have that common thread with these women where they suffer sexual trauma, abuse, poverty. Now, some people that's going to destroy, and it actually does destroy some people, but other souls that actually strengthens their willpower, that they are going to use the men who have used them, and they're going to get a wealthy life out of it. And hopefully they have found some happiness. They always say it's better to cry in a Rolls Royce than on a push bike. And so, well, they definitely had wealth, and it looks like she found religion at the end, but she certainly was not going to do it hard. She was in the Carlton Hotel. I love that story. Sort of, join the nuns by name, but certainly not physically. Love it. Well, my dears, I think that's about it, and I hope you enjoyed the story, and we'll find something totally different next time. I think we have explored enough for the time being the life of the courtesans, but we will come back to them eventually. Thank you, my dears, for listening. God bless. Take care, and bye-bye. A quick addendum, we are actually going to travel to, at the time of me now talking, these videos are made in advance, we're going to be traveling to the French part of Switzerland, and I hope to find this lady's grave. Our trip will be dependent on the weather. If it's really horrible weather, we're not going to go because we're going to book short notice. So if the weather is fine, and that means not raining, we'll head out there, and I hope I can add this on to the end of this video, our visit to the cemetery to her grave. So, fingers crossed. I just found this beautiful oil painting of Leanne de Pougy by Jean-Georges Barrade. Isn't it wonderful? Very mysterious with a cowl. Maybe that's sort of symbolic of her cloister-like life in the Carlton afterwards. It is lovely though. It's a lovely painting. And following up here are some photo portraits that I have found of her on the internet. Let's have a quick look at those. Well, my dear friends, a little bit of a disappointment because we were planning to go away in the middle of next week and we're just looking at the addresses. Now, because Leander Peugeot died in Lausanne, Switzerland, I assumed that she was also buried there. But it turns out she was not buried in Lausanne, Switzerland, but in France. And we're only going away for 2 days, and so we're not going to be traveling to France. It's really quite some distance. France is a huge country. The burial site is quite a long way away. We are planning to go to France in September if the restrictions are totally lifted, the COVID restrictions. So we're not going there this time, but I will be sharing some interesting graves that I do find in that area of Lausanne, Switzerland, but unfortunately not Leander Peugeot's. But let's have a look where her grave is. We can do that on Google Earth from the comfort of our armchair. So I'm just going to put in the address that I found and we'll head there. Isn't that wonderful? The technology where we can just fly through the air. Okay, so this is, the Association Saint Agnes, which is definitely, it's not in Lausanne, it's in France, and there is the graveyard. Can you see it? We'll actually go down there. So her family must have had some connection to this area, I can only assume, or somehow that the convent in Lausanne had some connection to this convent and allowed her burial. Let me see if I can put the little fellow down here. Here we go. So here we have the cemetery there, and that is where she is. She's in that cemetery, and it's not going to allow us to go into the cemetery, of course, but we can have a peek in the gate here. There we go. So she's in there somewhere. Maybe I'll get there in September. We'll have to check the distance exactly and see whether it's anywhere on our route. So unfortunately, won't be able to travel there next week, but it doesn't detract from the presentation at all. So we're just going to have a quick look now at how her gravestone looks. So here we have a photograph of the tomb of Princess Gika Leander Peugeot. Quite a pretty little grave. What a shame it's so far away. Calculated from Lausanne, which would be our destination, it's nearly 200 kilometers away. So unfortunately, not going to be doing that. But let's see if we can zoom in a bit. Here we go. So yeah, I'm guessing that the convent in Lausanne has some connection to this convent, and maybe the one in Lausanne doesn't have their own graveyard. So her body might have been transported here. Can't find any other information about her grave apart from this web page at all. So anyway, I have found the grave for you at least, although I didn't go there in person. There she lies in France. So the information that you find on the internet says that she basically died in Lausanne. Even on Find a Grave, findagrave.com, there is no known whereabouts of her grave. They have a listing for her, like a memorial for her, but they don't actually have a listing for her gravesite. I might actually do that now and correct that so that people do know where she's buried. Well, my dear friends, do take care. I'm finally going to shut up now, and we'll see you soon. Take care and God bless.